Hello, good people, and welcome to Find the Skills Hub. Here, we learn, we connect, and we grow. Beyond visualizations and creating reports in Power BI is also useful for simulation. So take an example. If you finish creating your reports, you've created revenue, but you want to simulate at which discount rate would you break even. Power BI allows you to create what we call numeric range parameters to allow you to simulate a series of discounts to see what the optimum revenue would be. Apart from numeric range, there is also the field parameters, which allows us to combine several measures and display them at a goal. We put this together in a case study. We've shared a file with you to build a very nice simple report where we use these two tools. So if you're game, join me in Power BI and let's get started. Right, so what we want to achieve in this Power BI report is to use Power BI's parameters to set a discount level where we break even or make profit. So we have this discount level simulator here, which is a slicer. So it allows us to set to different points and then check the impact it has on our profit. So this is the point where we have some of the regions making losses, right? So we can play with this and also even add certain attributes like consumer, corporate and home office, just to get a sense of how to set the discount based on the historical data. So apart from using parameters to set a numeric range in this case, we also learn how to use parameters to display different measures on the same chart. So this is revenue, and here it is even showing us the regions where we are going to make losses, even though revenue is positive, right? Can also show us cost and profit, right? So we learn how to display these three measures on the same clustered column chart using the parameters in Power BI. So if you're game, join me and let's get started. Okay, so we'll begin with our data. This has been shared with you. It contains sales for over a period of time. It's historical data based on orders received. Now, if you scan through the columns, the last column contains discounts, varied discounts per transaction. We want to use this as base case to set a fixed discount rate. Okay, so this is what we are going to start the report with. We'll go ahead and do our calculations with this discount. And then when we are done, we'll use parameters to now play and get the exact fixed discount that can be applicable to our different regions. This is a case study I'm sure you can apply to your own work if you have to use parameters in Power BI. So that is our raw data. We'll proceed and query this and then go on with our analysis and reports. Okay, so we go to a blank Power BI report, get data. This is in an Excel workbook. So we'll go and then fetch our start data. Because we are concentrating on some specific columns, we would use Power Query to delete or remove some of the columns that will not be useful. In this case, we get a suggestion for a table version of our data. So we'll go with this so that we save ourselves some steps in cleaning. So we'll commit this and then we'll transform. Right, so as you notice, some of the steps have already been done to get us the table version of this. So I'm going to rename this sales. Okay, so there isn't much to be done here. So all we need to do is select the columns that we need for our simulation. And to do that, under home, I'm going to choose columns. Okay, so this is going to list all the columns that we have here. For this historical data, we will take away some of the granular columns like row ID, order ID, okay, maybe delivery mode. If it's useful for analysis, you can keep it. Customer ID will go away, customer name. We'll keep segment city. Region will be kept. Country, we have only one country here, so we'll take it off. Product ID, we'll take it off. Category, subcategory, product name will go off. And we'll leave these value columns intact. Again, the case study relies on some of the columns for the simulation. So it's not as if it's cast in stone. So once we are done with this, we'll click OK, and this gives us the filtered version of our table. So that's all we are going to do in the ETL. So once we are done, we'll go to close and apply, and we'll load our data. Okay, so we now have our data loaded. It's one table. We have sales here. You can see all the columns that are here. The first thing we want to do is to calculate our revenue. If you look at the table well, the revenue is calculated by multiplying the selling price for each transaction and the quantity that was ordered. Then we would apply the discount. Okay, so to be able to do this multiplication for each transaction and sum, we are going to use the DAX function SUMX, right? So we'll do same for cost, which is going to be quantity times unit cost. Again, we use SUMX to get this done. And then when we are done, we'll subtract and then get our profit. So these are the three measures we are going to use in this case. So let's proceed. So back to the report view, I'm going to create the measures on this table, sales. I'll right click. I'll go to new measure. So the first one is going to be revenue. So as I indicated, this is going to be SUMX, which is an iteration function. It requires us to commit our table, which is sales. And then the columns we are going to multiply, bring a square bracket. This is going to be quantity times selling price for each transaction. Then we'll go ahead and discount this. So times into bracket 1 minus. So this is the discount that we are going to use for each transaction, historical discount. So once we are done, we'll close our bracket and close our bracket for SUMX, right? So this is going to be revenue. We'll go ahead and then press enter. That will be our first measure. Using the same method, we are going to calculate for cost. So I'll right click this, go to new measure, put in cost. So the same SUMX, we'll bring our table, which is sales, and then we'll multiply quantity sold by unit cost. Then we close our bracket, right? So we'll press enter for this. And then finally, we are going to create our profit. So profit is going to be a subtraction. So we have our profit here. So we already have revenue. So I'll call revenue with a square bracket and then subtract costs. Okay, so once we have this, we now have our three measures intact. Now, to make it easier, we will visualize these three calculations using the new card visual. So we'll take this new card visual, which is here, right? So I'll insert it, position it somewhere here. And in the data field, I'm going to load it with the three measures. So I'll come here, first put in our revenue, then we'll put in our cost, and then we'll put in our profit. Right. Now the reason I like using the new card visual is if you have three measures that are occupying the same area on your report, it makes it easier, or you can align them, format them at a go and all that. So let's leave it as it is. We'll come back and format. So for historical data, revenue was 6.56, cost was 5 million, and we have a profit of 1.29. So now that we are done with these measures, let's proceed and create our clustered column chart. So I would insert this clustered column chart here. So this is going to look at the regions and profits, right? So for our x-axis, we would come here and then put in our region. And then for our y-axis, we are going to put in profits, which is the bottom line we want to access, right? So based on this historical data, it appears all the branches, in this case, the regions, are making profit. Okay. So this is what the historical data gives us. Now, we want to simulate. If we are going forward based on the historical data with a varied discount rate, can we simulate one fixed discount rate to help us determine where we break even and then where we make losses and where we make profit? Which branches or which regions are making profit at which point? And this is where Power BI's parameters come in. If you are conversant with Excel what if scenarios, it works like that. So to use Power BI's parameters, you go to modeling. You have a parameters group here called new parameter. There are two types. There's a numeric range and then the field. So let's start with the numeric range. I'm going to click this. It opens this field. So what it does is that it allows you to set a range of values. Now, this range of values will now be harvested and used to simulate outcomes of measures you already have. Okay, so let's call this discount. So we can set the data type. In this case, because we want to move in percentages, we are going to set this as a decimal number. We'll leave the minimum at 0 and the maximum as 1. So this range will be 0 to 100% if you are going by decimal numbers. Then we can set the increment. So the increments, we want to set it to 5% movement. So in this case, we'll put 0.05. Then we can also set the default value, which in this case will be 0. It means at default, you start at 0 in the visual. Now, one useful addition is you can add a slicer based on these settings. So we'll leave this checked, and then we'll go ahead and then we'll create this. Okay, so this now gives us this default slicer. As we indicated, the default value is 0. So if you move this, you'll notice that the numbers that are currently selected shows up in this box. Okay, so this is how we are going to proceed. So I'm going to put this in the corner for now. Okay, so this is going to be our simulator. Now, to make you understand what is going on, when this parameter was created, a new table was created for us. This new table contains two fields. The first one is the discount, right? So this discount creates a series. It uses this DAX function called generate series, which has the same parameters we chose. Okay, default value starting at 0, going all the way to 1, and then increasing by 5%. You can always change this here. Okay, so that is the first field it created for us. Then it also created a measure called discount value. Now this discount value at every point in time shows what we have selected. So we can use this in any measure that we want to adjust, right? So this works like regular measures because I can even visualize this. I can draw this here as a card, okay? So as I move this, you notice that this also corresponds to whatever has been selected. And that is why it used selected value, right? If you want to use this as a measure or a visual on its own, you can even go ahead and then format, right? So in this case, I can even set this to a percentage format and then I get the output as I want. But in our visual, we will not need this. We'll rather use it inside the revenue calculation we did earlier. So let's go back to the revenue calculation we did. You'll notice that in the revenue calculation, we already had discount from historical sales, right? So we want to now replace this historical discount with the one that is coming from the discount value. Okay, so we'll just come back to our revenue and then replace this discount value. I'll go ahead and I'll press enter. So you notice that instantly, based on what we've selected, all our calculations, because profit depends on revenue, we now have the profit adjusted by the current discount that we've selected. If I go all the way down, okay, you notice that we revert to positive numbers in our profit. So this is how we are going to use this. So that is the first type of parameter, setting a numeric range that you can harvest and use in existing measures. Now let's go to the second type. The second type of parameter here will be the fields parameter. So what the fields parameter allows you to do is to put several measures in your report together so that you can display them at a go in one visual, right? So let's go on and then set the fields parameter. Let's call this output, right? So you can always adjust the name. And in this section, you can now bring in the measures you want to show together. So we want to show revenue, we want to show costs, and we want to show profit. Right. I'll go ahead and create the parameter showing the slicer here. So let's go ahead and create. Right. So what's going to happen here is the measure is created as output. We have our visual, which is our slicer here. So we are going to proceed. This current clustered column had only the profit showing. So we'll come here and then edit. So I'll click on the data field, and instead of showing only profit, we can come here and replace the profit with the output measure. So I'll come here and I'll choose this output field. Okay. So what's going to happen is that you now have revenue, cost, and profit showing across the regions. To make it more dynamic, you can now select which particular measure you want to see at a time. So if you want to see revenue, you choose revenue. You want to see costs, you see costs. You want to see profit, you can see profit. If you want to see maybe two at a time, you can hold control and select these two where you see revenue and profit side by side. Right. So this is the second type of parameter you can set. The first one is the numeric range, and the second one is the field parameter. Right. So you now get a sense of how we can use this for decision making. You can now set a point where you have profit and a point where losses start coming in. Okay. So if I choose only profit, this is where we see some regions making losses. To make it better, it will be good to now format and then indicate red for areas where we make losses, and then we maintain our green color for areas that we make profit. So let's now go ahead and format our report. Okay, so to proceed with our final design, we are going to use a PowerPoint background. Again, this has been shared. So we basically convert that PowerPoint slide into an image. We lift it, use it as a background in our canvas, and then we proceed with the rest of the format. So this is how we are going to do that. We'll come to the format, and then we'll go to canvas background. We'll browse for that image. So we'll come here and we'll lift the background, which I've done already as a JPEG file. So we'll set the transparency to 0 to bring the background out. Now, normally when you are using backgrounds, you have to set the theme to make your visuals transparent. So I'm going to go to the View tab, expand the theme options, and this theme, the classic theme, automatically sets transparent backgrounds for all visuals. So I'll choose that one. So this makes things a bit clearer. So we now can go ahead and position our visuals. So we'll begin with our new card visual. So we'll place this here. Okay. And we can go ahead and format. So what we are basically doing is we'll take off the background in this case. So we'll come to the card section and then turn off the background. Okay. So once that is done, we'll now pay attention to the call out values. So we'll come to the call out values and then change it, make it brighter to white. Okay. If you like, you can increase the font a bit, but we'll leave it as it is. Okay, so we proceed with labels, right? So we just set our values. Let's now go to our labels and make this brighter a bit. So we'll also set this to white. Okay, so this is what we have. If you like, you can center the values, okay, yes, so this makes it a bit more elegant. So to improve the presentation, we can go ahead and then add some accents to this. So we can come here and then introduce an accent bar. The accent bar can be colored, so we change it from the default to the green theme that we are using here. Increase it by a point or two just for effect. Okay, so this will now host our three measures. Now let's focus on our clustered column chart. So again, we'll position this based on the placeholder we have. Bring it down a bit. Okay. So let's take off the y-axis labels. So I'll come to the y-axis labels, switch it off. In place of that, we are going to bring data labels. So we'll switch on our data labels and make it white. So we'll come to our values and make this white. We can also increase the font a bit for visibility. Right. Usually it depends on the space that you've allotted. So in this case, I think the max has been set at 11 or 10. Now let's work on the x-axis labels. So we'll go to the x-axis labels. Currently, we can change the color. Currently, the color is gray. We'll make it white. And again, we can increase the font a bit. Right. So max 10 is fine. We can take off the profit by region because this is going to display all three measures that we've created. Okay, so keep it simple. This is what we have. Now let's work on the conditional formatting for the profit. So for conditional formatting, we'll come to the column section. So this is the column section, and here the default color is set to green. You can use this FX to apply conditional formatting. Right. So this is the conditional formatting dialog box. We'll keep it at rules. The field we are going to base this on is going to be the profit field. Then we'll set our rule. So because we are maintaining the green color, we are just setting a rule for situations where we fall below 0. So the rule is going to be greater than the min. So I'll delete the 0, min pops up here. We set this to a number, okay, and less than 0, also set to a number, then we color this red, okay. So that is the rule we are going to set. We'll click OK. So in this case, if we notice any losses, these bars will be colored red. Now let's place our outputs on top. So we currently have revenue, cost, and profits as regular slices. We want to change this to button slices. This is one of the new visuals that has been introduced. So I'll come to home and then change this to the button slicer. As you can see, this new one. Okay. So this now gives us the output side by side, right? So I'm going to resize this, right? So the thing with the button slicer is that you can set it to radio buttons and introduce select icons. Okay, so to make it easier, we are going to select it, go to format, and in here, you notice there is a new selection icon which is currently turned off. So go ahead and switch it on. So this now gives us the radio buttons. We want to keep it clean and simple, so we'll take off the title here, okay, and then we'll come and set the background to a plain background. So to do that, I'll come here, come to the buttons, okay, and in the fill section, I'm going to turn this off, okay. So once I turn it off, you can't see the labels currently. So to set the labels, I'm going to come to the call out labels, okay, and in the value section, change the color from black to white, right? So this is going to be the labels. Let's increase the size a bit. So we'll increase it to about 10 or 11 in this case, just to be consistent with our numbers here. Okay, so this is how it looks currently. So let's go back to our selection icon. Okay, so in the selection icon, we'll come to the icon section, which is currently black, and then come and set this to white, just to make it a bit more visible. So the last thing we are going to do is to take off the border lines for our buttons, right? So under the buttons section, we'll come here and then turn the border lines off. So we have a clean background and just our regular radio buttons. Okay, so we're almost done on the right side. Let's come to our discount. So for this, we'll place it in the placeholder in our background image. Okay, so all we need to do is make the label white and the color value white as well. So I'll click on the format visual, come to our slicer header, change the font color to white. Again, you can increase the font to about 10 or 11. Okay, then we go to the values. Okay, so this is the value section. Again, we change those to white. Again, you can increase the font to make it a bit more visible to 11. Okay, so this is where we will select our discount. Right. Finally, we want to throw in one attribute on segment to add a layer to the simulation. So I will go ahead and insert a new button from scratch, a new button slicer from scratch. I'm going to place this here. So for this, I'm going to fill it with the sales segment. Okay, so we'll just do a sales segment here. Right. Then to make things easier, I can take this earlier button slicer, do a format painter, and then apply it to this one. Okay, so it applies it. The only thing I have to do now is change the orientation. So I'll come to layout, and instead of the grid, we choose the vertical format. Right. So this will now add a layer to our analysis. So if we determine the break-even point for region, we can go into the different sales segment to get further and better details on how to set the discount. Right. So this was more of learning how to use parameters than formatting or designing the report, but I'm sure you've picked up some lessons here. The key takeaway is the fact that you can use Power BI's parameters, either the numeric range to set a range of values to simulate existing measures, or the field parameters to be able to have measures displayed in the same visual article using a slicer. So I'll be happy to read your comments and your progress. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos, or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.